watching Channel 8 News Now at 5 with Paula Francis and Dave Cavassier. The news for Southern Nevada is now.
Despite yesterday's shootout at the Lloyd George Federal Building, the courthouse was open for business today. And the first trial on the docket, the prosecution of a husband and wife for failing to pay millions in taxes. But this is hardly a routine tax case, since the defendants are also central figures in the complicated medical mafia saga that George has been telling us about. George Knapp is here with that story.
The tax trial of Mr. and Mrs. Howard Awan was supposed to start yesterday morning at almost exactly the moment when Johnny Lee Wicks pulled a shotgun from under his trench coat and opened fire. In other words, all the jurors, lawyers, and media who showed up this morning for the Awan trial would have been walking into the federal building at exactly the wrong time. For the Awans, timing is everything. They think it's no accident they're being tried now, just a month before the next medical mafia prosecution is set to begin. Despite Monday's deadly gunfire, justice was not to be delayed at the federal courthouse, which meant the tax trial of Howard Awan and wife Linda started right on time Tuesday morning. Awan is the alleged linchpin of the complicated medical mafia scheme. The former military medic is neither a doctor nor a lawyer, but served as consultant to both. The FBI believes Awan, through his company, manipulated lucrative personal injury settlements by divvying out particular cases to different doctors and lawyers. Medical bills were allegedly jacked up, and hundreds of millions of dollars went not to the injury victims, but to doctors, lawyers, and the Awans.
And it'll be worth at least $4.5 million. At least. At least.
Surrounded by his attorney buddies in a happier time, Awan could afford to joke about money. According to financial records, he and his wife were earning an average of $83,000 a month at the height of the alleged medical mafia conspiracy. For the years 2001 through 2004, they made around $9 million, but didn't bother filing their taxes until years later, after they learned the IRS was investigating. And the payments they started making are a pittance compared to what they owe. Federal prosecutor Steve Myrie alleges that while the Awans were ignoring their tax obligations, they lived like Hollywood stars, buying mansions, luxury cars, even splurging $180,000 for Howard's birthday party. Awan allegedly received kickbacks in the form of consulting fees from lawyers, including Noel Gage, who will be his co-defendant next month, in exchange for sending millions of dollars worth of injury cases to Gage's office. Gage allegedly agreed to forego malpractice suits against Awan's close associate, Dr. Mark Cabins, who recently pled guilty and will testify against Awan and Gage. Awan's defense team will argue that while the husband and wife owe millions in back taxes, they should not be sent to prison because they didn't know failure to pay taxes carried prison time as a possible punishment. In their briefs, they say the IRS website doesn't spell it out, that misdemeanor tax charges can land someone behind bars. They suspect the U.S. attorney wants to nail the Awans on tax charges in order to squeeze them into cooperating against Noel Gage and other as-yet unindicted persons in the medical mafia case. More than 24 Las Vegas doctors and lawyers were served with subpoenas in the case back in 2006, but have yet to be charged. One of those who was subpoenaed, prominent attorney Bob Vanna, was secretly recorded talking about Awan after the I-Team broke the story of the investigation.
This thing's killing Howard. He's a pariah right now. I'll be honest with you, the FBI's not interested in me. They're interested in Howard.
Do you think Howard's going to go to prison?
No, I don't think anything's going to happen.
Because of the amounts they owe and the length of time that's passed, the Awans could face up to 3 years in prison if convicted on all 4 misdemeanor counts. For the record, federal authorities will not say they want this conviction in order to get Awan to cooperate on other prosecutions, but it certainly has to be on their minds. And if Awan and his wife are to be sentenced to the maximum, they might think long and hard about their next move, especially with a much more serious criminal trial looming just 4 weeks from now. Tonight at 6 o'clock, a look at that defense strategy, Ignorance is Bliss.
That's the first time I've heard that one, at least in that particular detail.
Yeah.
Didn't know you'd go to jail. Thank you, George. A self-described fixer who is at the heart of the complicated medical mafia investigation went on trial today on charges that sound mundane but are actually pretty serious. Medical consultant Howard Awan and his wife Linda are accused of failing to pay millions in taxes for the years when the alleged medical legal scheme was up and running. Their defense? they didn't know it was an offense that could send them to prison. The I-Team's George Knapp is here with the story.
Paul, jury selection began this morning in the tax trial of Linda and Howard Awan. Just 24 hours after federal courthouse was the scene of a running gun battle. The FBI considers Awan to be the linchpin of a complicated scheme which raked in tens of millions of dollars over a period of more than 5 years, involving more than 24 of our town's best-known doctors and lawyers. In an opening statement this afternoon, prosecutor Steve Myrie laid out the government's case. The Awans were making an average of $83,000 a month during the years 2001 to 2004, but they didn't bother paying their taxes. Instead, they splurged on mansions and other real estate, fancy cars, including a Bentley, and a birthday party that cost $180,000. They did file years later showing income of more than $9 million, but barely paid anything. The defense says they knew the taxes were overdue, but didn't know these misdemeanor offenses could send them to prison. They argue the IRS website doesn't spell it out, nor does the tax code. So while they might owe the money, they shouldn't do the time. We asked a couple of tax lawyers and experts what they think of this defense, and we're told it sounds like a, quote, boilerplate tax protester defense, the same sort of argument made by anti-government tax holdouts. And they say the government almost always prevails in such cases. If convicted, the duo could be sentenced to 3 years in prison. Next month, Howard Awan is due to go on trial with another alleged medical mafia conspirator, attorney Noel Gage. Federal sources have indicated that a conviction here could help in getting the Awans' cooperation, not only against Gage, but against other potential targets who have not yet been indicted. And, of course, we'll stand on top of it.
Thanks, George.
Sure.